Hi, my name is Frank Schaefer, and like other Americans, I'm in shock at yet another political assassination attempt. And I held off making comments on this until I could think about things a little bit. Not a bad idea. And I want to look at the situation we find ourselves in, of division and violence, from a couple different perspectives that might appear a little new to you. Because actually, I'd like to put this in somewhat of a historical context. You know everything we know about the shooter so far that I think will be confirmed is that, for a start, this is not part of some grandiose conspiracy. This is not part of the big left-right divide in America. This is just another young, uneducated, simple man who got tossed out of the gun club in his school because he was such a bad shot and was bullied and made fun of for being a loser. What happened to Donald Trump is what has happened to all those children who get killed in school shootings. It's a mixture of ignorance, disenfranchised, angry young men, the availability of guns everywhere that the NRA and gun lobby have made possible, backed by a right-wing Supreme Court, backed by Donald Trump himself. The real problem is not some grandiose conspiracy of the kind that Elon Musk and others have hinted at in their own grandiose manner of always trying to see some overarching theme which explains everything and somehow leaves them with even more political power and clout as billionaires on the right. But you know the left suffers from the same problems of grandiose explanation for the simplest of things. And the simplicity of the situation we find ourselves in is one none of us want to really look at in the face, because it makes us all complicit. We have an unmoored generation of young shooters in this country who are the victims of easy and frivolous divorce, an educational system that has collapsed in many places, a gun lobby that has twisted Congress to its own will through millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars of lobbying funds. We in America are so bent on entertainment and streaming and our phones and everything else. And our billionaires have written algorithms to turn us all into clickbait recipients, following our own points of view down rabbit holes again and again. That what happened to Donald Trump is an inevitable consequence of what we've allowed our country to become. A country of extremists, far more bent on winning for their point of view than they are at looking at themselves in the mirror. We push each other to extremes. This young man is the product of a failed educational system, a failed society, of ultra-violence where somehow manhood is now translated into this club he belonged to that worships and adores guns, an attempt to get into a gun club and being kicked out, the acquisition of an AR-15, an ultimate murder weapon in the hands of hundreds of thousands of Americans of all political persuasions. The idea that what men do is shoot things, whether it's opening fire on cans of beer in protest with a machine gun, somehow that's okay. Opening fire on a former president as a moment of validation of, look what I can do. You kicked me out of your gun club, but look, I'm still somebody. But where this comes from is a history of violence. All these headlines saying this is not who we are. Yes, this is exactly who we are. I'm sorry, I was in the 1960s. I remember where I was when Kennedy was shot, and then his brother, and Martin Luther King Jr. I remember where I was on all these occasions. And back then we heard, oh, this is not who we are, but it is who we are. Our real history is a history of division. From the very beginning, there are two strains of thought that shaped America. One was Enlightenment humanism that came out of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment of Europe, that informed people like Jefferson, slaveholder though he was. And the other strain is the crazy people in the Bay State colony, Winthrop and others, who within moments of getting here were burning and hanging witches. The extremism of fundamentalist faith transmitted to America via the early Northeastern settlers. Those two factions, humanist science-based Enlightenment ideas of freedom and progress and liberty, have been at war with the idea of the Bay State colonies from the beginning. This is a country divided between religious extremism, presently manifested again in the Trump cult, run largely by far-right fundamentalist Christians, both Catholics and also increasingly Pentecostals, charismatic Christians, who literally live in another universe where fact to them is fiction, manifest in things like the extremism of the anti-vax movement and so forth. And the only thing that's different right now is because of social media, these groups of fanatics, individual loons, can express themselves widely. And it's that atmosphere that has created the place where your lone male displaced gunman with access to an AR-15 because of the gun lobby, because of the Republicans, because of the Supreme Court, who virtually handed him that weapon and said, go prove yourself now, any way you want. This madness built into American history, these divisions, suddenly burble to the surface and we all say, my God, what has happened to us? We need to tell the truth about ourselves. And the Democrats, whether we stay with Biden or find another candidate, need to start telling the truth to the American people. And it is not, oh, what a great country we are. It is, oh, what a sorry mess we are. The ideal candidate for a Democratic president that would replace Biden and run on our ticket, if we find one, would be a younger candidate, so we get rid of the whole age misnomer. What a ridiculous thing to discount the wisdom of someone like Joe Biden, who has done such a masterful job in bringing back our economy and our place in the world, but that's another subject. But who would be not someone who appeals to the left of the Democratic Party, our own extremists, or tries to find a middle ground between Republicans and Democrats, but someone who has a very different message. And that is, there's one thing that America has always been good at. Yes, the same America that lynched people, the same America that had slaves, the same America that is divided and stupid now. There was one thing we used to be good at, and this we can go back to without solving all our other problems, even without solving the problems of the multiplicity of guns we have, even without solving the problems of the gun cult and the Trump cult and the left-wing gender cult and the cult from the left of language, the cult from the left of inclusion and identity politics, which itself is an extreme position when carried to the limits. Itself is anti-science. We can do better than that, and that is we can find one thing we can all agree on. And this is what the next Democratic presidential candidate that replaces Biden, if that happens, has to do. We need to remind Americans that if you visit Switzerland, where I was born, but you're not born in Switzerland, you will never become a Swiss. If you visit Greece, this very tribalistic country that I know something about, the divisions are so deep that if you're not even born on the same island that other people are born on, let alone just as a Greek national, you're never from that place. India is the same with its Hindu nationalism. God help you in the Arab countries if you're not a Muslim and want to build a Roman Catholic Church in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Good luck with that. But there's one thing America's always been good at, and that is we've always identified ourselves first as Americans, and then secondary to that as an Italian American, a Greek American, or even an African American more recently. We're Americans. And we're broken, and we have problems. We're not who we should be. We have a sordid past. This fight between Enlightenment reason on one hand and fundamentalist Christianity and religion on the other is still going on. In all the nonsense you hear about God choosing Donald Trump or a city set on a hill, doesn't matter. It's always the same in every generation. We can't solve that. But for the sake of my grandchildren and your children, for the sake of peace, for the sake of prosperity, for the sake of our future, could we please all do one thing again? With the left wing in America, look at the Trump supporters who use the wrong gender language, who use the wrong racial language, who from our point of view are fascists and bigots. Could we just also admit that they are Americans? And so are we. And could the right wing, the open carry gun people, those who think the Supreme Court is doing a good job by favoring the religious civil liberties of the far right over and above those of the gay people, could we look at the right wing haters of gay people and trans people and Black people and say, yeah, but they are Americans, for better or worse. We are Americans. You can come here, as my granddaughter-in-law did a couple years ago, who married my grandson, my oldest grandson, from France, and apply for your citizenship. And it's not just a piece of paper. You can be an American, and other people will receive you as an American. The genius of America is we could say, well, I hear an accent. Where were you born? Oh, I was born in Romania. I was born in Afghanistan. I was born in Germany. I was born in Nigeria. But I applied for my citizenship. Oh, you're going to become an American. Yes, I am an American. And I am an American. I was born in Switzerland to crazy missionary fundamentalist right-wing parents, and I fled that religion. And I'm on the other side politically of Donald Trump and his evangelical enablers, and I criticize them all the time. But we are all Americans. And when you go to other countries, they don't do that. You're always the outsider. We do one thing well. It's called inclusion. Elon Musk, with whom I disagree heartily on everything, and I think he's a bit of a self-aggrandizing loon, comes from South Africa, but he's here now. He's an American. And when those rockets take off and make us proud, because in this country, anyone can arrive, yes, he had a silver spoon in his mouth, so what? He's a technological genius. I disagree with him politically. But Elon Musk and I, both Americans, we were born somewhere else. I disagree with a lot of what he thinks. I rather dislike the tech bros. I think they're a bunch of insensitive, greedy psychopaths. But guess what? They're Americans. There are psychopaths. To my left-wing friends, and I am of the left, Donald Trump is an American. And I think he's a con artist. I think he's an authoritarian bigot, but he's an American because we have a big tent, and not everybody in that tent is savory or good on the left or the right. This isn't moral equivalency, but we used to do one thing well. We're not going to solve the gun problem overnight. We're not going to solve the race problem overnight. But at least we can take one step back and admit something. The people we disagree with most vehemently and feel are threatening our future, whether we're a Trump voter or a Biden fan as I am, or want to dump Biden and get somebody else, we are Americans. And if we can just start thinking of ourselves as Americans again, not that America is the greatest country on earth, we're just another place with a sordid history, no worse and no better than anybody else. All these younger people who think that we're the oppressor. I'm sorry, you haven't studied the history of other countries. Sorry, that's the human condition. To oppress or be oppressed and then struggle for liberty, that's a different issue. But right now, can we all take a deep breath and reaffirm one simple truth? America is genius at one thing. You can come here from anywhere as anybody and become an American. We brought Black people here as slaves, but they are Americans now. And we regard them as such. We whites, bigots though we are, understand that that Black soldier or airman or Marine in a uniform down at Parris Island, where my son was a Marine, training young white recruits and yelling at them, he's an American. Let's have a little pride in that. We did something right. Of all the countries in the world, we are the most accepting and receiving of people, and we argue about everything, and we hate each other, and we have too many guns. And this silly loner who couldn't get into a gun club is not part of a right-wing or a left-wing conspiracy. Whatever his little manifesto was, or whatever he posted online, he's just another school shooter, another dumbass kid. Let's look hard at ourselves at what we're doing to young men in this country and stop being so grandiose about it. This is what easy divorce and too many guns and lonely kids in their parents' basement masturbating to porn that somehow, God help us, why is that everywhere now? I'm not talking about whether porn is right or wrong, but hey, this is not sex education. What do you expect to have happen when we devolve to that place of incivility where gun clubs produce loners who want to go shoot people to prove they actually can shoot, maybe make a name for themselves because they killed a former president? This is sad. But in the midst of all this crazy talk, in the midst of whether we dump Biden and have somebody else, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or some other candidate, I just hope that somebody stands up and says, wait a minute, take a deep breath. You've done one thing right in this country. We are all Americans, wherever you're from, whether you were brought here, your ancestors were brought here in a slave ship, or with a silver spoon in your mouth from South Africa to build rockets. We are Americans. Take pride in that. Let's at least start there, and then let's have a conversation. My name is Frank Schaefer.